What's up, everybody? My name is Michael Burpo. I'm a watercolor artist, and you're gonna watch me paint Cinderella Castle. So I'm gonna jump right in with painting these trees that are right in the foreground. And when you're painting trees, a lot of the times you have to layer up the paints, and that's why you see me going in with these washes that are gonna go right on top of each other, and I'm going to eventually add even more detail onto them. But this is like the reason why I'm starting with the foreground trees is some of the castle peeks through the holes in the kind of the space in between the branches. So I want to paint the trees in there first so that I can kind of be informed as to where I'm going to paint the rest of the castle. And you'll see that I'm using a variety of different techniques to try to mimic the look of the various leaves, and part of that is kind of keeping things loose and layering up the paints and adding these darks and these lights back in. And I'm trying my hardest not to focus too much on the details, but more on the shape of the trees. So that's why I'm adding in these darks to kind of impersonate the darks that you'll see in the photo that I'm using as my reference. And then I'm going to add the it's almost like kind of this wheat looking grass that's in the foreground, and this kind of is really nice because it sort of frames the picture. And with this I start with a bunch of a wash, and then I'm going to add the darks on top of it. So I'm usually working with a light wash, and then I'm painting wet on wet. And when you're painting things that are what I would consider a crowd, which a lot of times if you're painting a crowd, it's not a singular object, you're trying to get the motion and the busyness in there. What I'm going to do is I think that you start with a wash, and then you want to move towards the darks, and the darks can be added in later. You can't paint the lights in, you have to leave the lights. And again, I'm going to do a different technique as well. Just I start with all the light green, and then I'm going to add the dark in there, and I'm trying to add the darks back in. So that's the key kind of tenet of watercolor painting, is that you're never really painting with light. You're always leaving the light, and you're sculpting it using the darks. I took a little break. Now I'm coming back. Now everything is drier, and I want to add the roofs of the castle in. The reason why is because the roofs are going to be the most stable sort of part of the picture, and then the rest of the structure will kind of set up the roof, you might say. And so I paint the roofs in there. I guess you probably could wash in the sandstone and the tan, but I decided I think the roofs would go all right because I didn't really know how the roofs would sit on top of the sandstone if I did do a full wash. And I think it's easier to go like this, and I don't mind painting around the roofs. So I think it's about staying detailed and not rushing. A lot of the times people try to rush and they try to impersonate the artist that they see online, and they're just always moving too fast, and they're getting too there's a difference between moving fast and staying loose and also being sloppy. I think sloppy is something that people sometimes underestimate, and I think that the sloppiness is not the same as keeping a nice loose wash in there. And I'm trying my hardest to stay tight, but also let the paint kind of move around the page and stay sort of fun and loose. I try not to get too detail oriented, but what I'm trying to do is add in the golds here. And gold is just a mixture of yellow and a tiny bit of brown. I always have a hard time really capturing it because sometimes I think gold is very it's so close to yellow, but it's not. It's not exactly yellow. It's slightly brown. So I'm trying to add those in there, and then I'll probably get my wash going. I do a pencil sketch ahead of time, and the reason why I use a pencil sketch ahead of time before I get on stream is because you can't really see the lines that well, and a lot of times it's kind of boring because it's a lot of fussing about and trying to make sure that things are in the right spot, because if your pencil sketch isn't good, then your painting is definitely not going to be good. Your pencil sketch is going to set up the architecture of it. We're off to a good start, people. We're feeling good. All right. We're going to let that dry. Then we're going to do the tan. wash. Yeah, and you know what it is? Everything looks bad until you toss the details in there. That's what I think is so funny. Is like if you don't throw the details in, it just, you know, you're gonna be stuck there. And people sometimes give up when they don't have details in there. This is a big painting, and I'm only 50 minutes into it. You know, I think it took me 35 minutes to sketch this, so whatever. Yeah. So I let my paints dry, and I think it's key to letting your paints dry if you want to get detail in there, because if you paint while it's still wet, your details are going to start swimming around, which is sometimes what you want, and you know that's good when you're doing things like painting flowers, but when you're painting details, I like to come to a complete stop and let my paints solidify and dry right on the page, and that way when I get in and I paint on top of them, I'm painting wet on dry, and that allows me a lot more control. It's just my style. I think some people can have a slightly different style, and I think that you see right now that I am painting a little bit of wet on wet, and that's because these shadows are secondary shadows where it's not exactly the hard outline, for example, of like, you know, the edge of a window. That's a hard outline. These are more like the curvature of the towers and the cylinders, and I'm adding in that detail as like a secondary shadow, and the more finer details will come in later. But I think that it's nice adding in like a little wash. I think adding in the wash ahead of time really allows me to start to see the picture come together, and I don't ever feel like I can be critical and look at my paintings holistically until I start to, you know, really have everything out on the page. And so what I try to do is, if I don't like the way a painting looks because it's in the ugly stage, I make sure that I get to every single step of the painting, which is, you know, adding in all the elements before I start to be critical. And now I'm being a little bit drastic. I'm adding in the darks again. You see that everything is pretty one shade, and now, because if you look at the picture that I'm using as a reference photo, there's some pretty heavy darks in the foreground, and that allows the image in the background to kind of feel a little bit more ethereal, or a little bit lighter, or more like the protagonist of the painting. And you need to have those darks in there to have your lights shine brighter. And that's one thing people forget a lot of times, is they feel like they can you know, just keep everything nice and light, but the contrast is what allows things to pop a little bit better. All right, there we go. All right, I like this motion. This feels very natural. I don't love this. This feels very impressionistic. I need something up here, but I'm gonna wait until I do my my wash. All right, I could lift some pigment up, but what needs to happen is I need to throw a little bit more darks in here. This has some brick, and I'm going to have to toss some brick into there. I need to do the windows and add the extra darks up here, because you can see like these strokes need to go in there, and these like little dots of the whatever that is, like the Gothic scaffolding. Oh, I need to fix that. Let me quickly add that blue in there before I forget. Yeah. And I always stop and do like little critiques of my painting, and this one I did out loud because I was streaming. I've been streaming my paintings on Twitch, and mainly because, you know, I'm going to be painting no matter what. So I think that having people to kind of pass the time with, and, you know, also just kind of working towards building another one of my platforms is a good thing. But what I always do is you got to look critically at your paintings at like a halfway point, and a lot of times people wait until the very end of their painting to think critically, and then it might be too late. So I like to look at it, you know, every 30 minutes or an hour. All right, let's do some details up in the sandstone. And for this, I'm going to use a liner brush. So to give you guys an idea, I'm going to show you the difference. Here, I'm going to actually dip this one before I show you. All right, so I've got two different brushes. Let's do, yeah. So I've got two different brushes. This is what I have been painting the entire painting with, just about, until now. And so this is called a round. So it's Aqua Elite Princeton brush, long, round, and it's a number 6, which is just the size of it. I like this one for details, but it also, since it's round, it gives you irregular strokes, which I like. It makes it so it doesn't look so cookie cutter. And then this one is called a liner. So this is a Aqua Elite, same brand as this one. Princeton brush liner. It's a number 4. So that's the size also. This one is really nice for details that need to be the same thickness. And you can see that on a couple spots, like in the reference photo, you see like those little details that are up there. That is going to be handy for that. So yeah, let's paint a little bit of it. All right. So, all right, we need a little bit of, so we're going to do a mix of dark brown, and honestly, I'm going to just quickly, I have to wet my color, because that'll soak into it. Unfortunately, this brown is the only color I'm starting to run out of. All right, so you got this one. I'm going to work from the bottom up. People are kind of funny when it comes to painting, you know, these details. To me, it's just like using a pen. I've started switching away from using a pen on my watercolor paintings to using a detailed liner brush. It's about the same, but I think that the paint, the dark, allows you a little bit more variation, and also it sits a little bit better on the paper, and it feels like more cohesive. And I'm trying to get to like that, you know, pinnacle watercolor stage. But these details is what really makes a painting kind of look really nice. And you'll see right around now is when the painting starts to kind of come alive, and that's the value of adding, you know, darks into your painting. And I try to get a little bit of variation in there with my darks as well. The other thing is, the truth about watercolor paintings is that the difference in quality watercolors, there's 3 pockets, or there's 2 pockets to them. There is the, I think it's like $30 and below. And honestly, those are watercolors. They work. The first 40 or 30 watercolors I painted were painted with a set that was, I think, like a $10 set or like a $9 set that I got from a Secret Santa. And I painted a ton of them, and they're good for learning. The things that you'll get, like that you won't get with like a set of watercolors, is like the saturation, the pigmentation of them is just not enough, and you're not going to get as great watercolor washes with them. But you know what? Who cares? And like, I was using bad watercolor paper that would just really change color in the light. And so you know what? I did 30, 40 paintings with them, and then I bought this set, and I think there's the $25 and below, and then there's I'd probably say $300 and $300 to $450 kind of bracket, and that is the pro set. And that's what I use. I use a set of watercolor. Nah, I'll show it to you some other time. I use a set of watercolors. Here, actually, let me do it like this. This is what my set looks like. Oh, it's dripping. That's all right. So this is a set of Schminkas. Man, I have a command for this too, and I'm just not using it. I have a set of Schminka watercolors. I use Bristol paper. Bristol is just, it's not that expensive. It's like $10 for a large, or it's like $5 for like a large sheet. I usually buy 20 sheets at a time for $100, and that'll keep me painting for like 2 years because I cut mine down. The Schminka ones, I think, honestly, like, I would say just, you should probably paint 20 paintings, and if you still like it after painting 20 paintings, you should sit down and buy yourself a nicer set. And these sets last you forever. I probably painted 300 paintings, 200 paintings with these, and I haven't even made a dent. Like, they literally are so new. And I'm using half pans and full pans. The half pans, honestly, I don't even notice that they're, I might be a third of the way into them. So, alrighty. Back to the liner. It's, the other thing is, though, watercolor brushes. I think watercolor brushes are one of those things. Either spend $2 on one brush or spend $20 on one brush. If you spend $10, you're not getting anything. This brush right here, this liner, I'm not trying to flex. This brush cost me like $19. But I also used hella Michaels
coupons. This brush was expensive, man. And the thing about it, it's worth it because I'm going to use it a ton. And if you're not going to use it a ton, don't buy this freaking brush.
But seriously, I think that it's not the quality of your materials or your tools that are going to make your paintings better. They can help elevate just a little bit, but really what is actually going to make you better is just making more. You gotta be painting all the time. You gotta be practicing. If you don't paint 50 paintings, then why would you think that you're going to be good? You need to be practicing all the time, or just, see it as a hobby. And if that's the case, no problem. But if you don't really need a $200, $300, $400 set of paintings, of paints, or really expensive paintbrushes, I painted the first 50, so paintings of mine using a really cheap set of paints. And honestly, I could probably pick that up and make some pretty decent paintings. What those other sets won't give you is the quality of some of these gradients, and also the pigmentation isn't as dense in a lot of these other sets of watercolor paintings that are the student sets, I think that they're called, instead of the pro sets. I use a pro set because it allows you to get these additional layers. I think that the paper that you use does have a pretty marked effect on your paintings, because some paper is hot press or cold press, which I'll get into at a different time. But depending on what quality that paper is, you want to avoid any paper that will yellow with sunlight. And I made a mistake. A bunch of my earlier paintings were on just regular notebook paper, and that stuff, it really fades and changes color in the light, and that is going to kind of hinder the look of your paintings. But when it comes to the paints, it's all about the technique. If you're detailed, you can draw in the sand and make it look good, or you can use highlighters. It's not the material that's going to make your paintings look nice. But you'll see that I'm going through and I'm adding in these details, and this, again, it's really where the painting is going to start to come alive, is when you start adding in the extra darks in the full values. And I really love this stage. It's no secret, there is an ugly stage, and people get really discouraged when they're kind of early on in their careers, or just more beginners, and they don't believe that they can pull a painting out of the ugly stage. Every single painting I've ever done has had one. And I kind of have like a comfort in that sometimes I'm painting and my paintings look ugly until the second I'm done. And even then, sometimes paintings don't ever stop being ugly, and that's just a learning experience. But I try my hardest to kind of stay confident and trust that I know what I'm going to do. And sometimes if I can't figure it out, I take a picture of my paintings, I send it to my friends and say, hey, what is wrong with this painting? I can't figure it out. And getting another set of eyes is always valuable. I think that when you start to add these details, it renders in and kind of sculpts the painting and adds some nice hard edges, which your eye naturally is going to see through, your eyes kind of sense of aperture, kind of like a camera, in that what you're focusing on is going to render a little bit more. And all we're trying to do is trick the eye into thinking that what we're looking at is real. And the details is going to be one of those things that's going to trick people into believing that what they're looking at is a photo or is a real place. The colors matter because that will give it its likeness, but a lot of the times it's the details and the hard rendering that is going to kind of trick people. But I'm also adding in these bricks, and I love doing bricks, and what I try to do is I bounce around the painting so that there's a nice cohesive look to all the bricks, because assuming that they were used all over the place. And it's also, you don't have to paint every single brick in there. You can also just let your wash be 90% of the brick, and then add in your own bricks on top of it as just the highlights or the lowlights, and that'll kind of allow you to paint most of this big painting without having to be super detailed. And I'm just adding in sandstones and grays and blues, and just kind of adding the colors that I kind of see there, and adding in, now I'm painting on top of it as well. And I think that this is a really fun spot, and I think that this is where I start to be excited about a painting, is right around now.
Woo! Let's do a little face. Guys, we're doing good. I'm enjoying myself. I think I'm going to quickly do a little wash for the sky, and then I think that this painting will be done. Crazy. Talk about fast one. Oh. Yeah, it's not like super well refined, but we do that off stream. Yeah, I think it's kind of fun. Works so fast, it's wild. Thank you, Knitting. Yeah, I think so far I'm 2 hours and 19 minutes into the stream. That's how much painting I've done. I did a little bit of talking, and then I think I probably did about 30 minutes of sketching on this one. And I think I kind of need to do the sketching off stream because you can't really see it, and it's going to be kind of boring as you see me redraw the same line like 13. Yeah, so now I'm going to get into the wash of the sky, and this is kind of time sensitive, and it's very hit or miss. And I think that the only way to do good skies is just to paint a lot of them. Again, it kind of circles back to what I was just saying. And what I use is a mop brush, kind of like a bigger brush, and I'm going to wet down the top, and I'm going to leave a couple of strategic little white spots as well. And I'm not going to wash the entire thing because the way that we see the sky is we see it very, intense above us, and as it goes into the distance, we see kind of a more, I guess, clouds as it gets lower, as it meets the horizon and it's farther away. That's kind of going to give the perception of looking deep into the sky. And what I'm doing is I'm adding in this wash really quickly, and this is all moving fast. You only have one shot really to paint these washes in, and then I'm adding the variations in the sky, so I'm kind of tricking you into thinking that there are clouds. And all of this is just kind of moving kind of quickly and painting around these towers. What's going to make people believe that the towers are in front of the sky as opposed to stopping the sky is going to be painting the details in continuing them across the sky and behind the towers, and also right up to the edge. So that's why you can see me going in and kind of trimming things up. And right now I'm sort of pleased with it. I'm adding back in some of these darks that might have gotten touched up to have it stand a little bit more contrasting versus the sky. And I'm rather pleased with how this one washed. And I think adding in the final little touches that pop out, these reds really stand against the blue of the sky. And I'm actually really happy. The sky makes such a difference because now the whites have a meaningful value as opposed to just being unpainted page. And that's kind of what I think about, is you got to get every single element onto the page before you can be really critical about if something is working or not working. So now I'm going to start kind of being a little bit more critical and make a couple details. Stamp it, and honestly I probably should get a little bit more. Do I want to kind of mess around with this down here? There we go. All right. All the colors really complement each other. Thank you so much, Joey. That's so kind of you. All right. Stand by, everybody, for 1 second. I'm going to go get my stamps, and I'm going to go stamp this bad boy up, and we'll call this a day. All righty, everybody. Okay. So if you weren't here for my last stream, I use a little stamp. This is from, like, buying a ring. But I have a couple different stamps, and I always stamp my work. It's kind of how I sign it. So I've got this bigger stamp in here. This is for numbered prints. I use this one to stamp the back, and then this one, you can't really see it that well, but this is what I use to stamp all my work. So I'm going to put it right there. And I always say, you're not going to ruin your painting with your stamp. You're going to ruin it by getting ink somewhere that you didn't intend it to, by smudging it. Alright, let's get this. not my best work. We're going to take that. We're going to quickly cover this. We're going to go back and grab this. Take this. There we go. Alrighty, everybody. So, let's take a closer look. I might play with this a little bit more after it's done. There we go. I might erase the pencil marks. Yay. Well, I think that that's pretty much it. Let me go to show. There we go. Yeah, I'm rather actually pleased with this one. It's kind of nice. It's got some interesting movement. I like the sandstone. I like, honestly, this brick is rather successful. This is kind of, you take it or leave it. This tree, not ideal. Honestly, it needs a little bit of a touch-up really quickly. Let me do that. Let me throw a little bit of this on there and make sure I don't ruin the painting, because I have ruined paintings with a final stroke before. It always makes you cry. All right. Window. That way we have a vertical. All right. Thank you, Sean the shooter. Sean a trick. Won't clutch. All right, everybody. That's the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed watching me paint Cinderella Castle, and I hope you learned something along the way. I've been trying to stream every Thursday and Sunday. Thursday around 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and on Sunday it's around 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And normally I'm just painting commissions or just things for fun, take viewer suggestions, and I'm trying to make a go at it. I think it's really fun painting with an audience, and I hope you enjoy. This painting is available for sale on my Etsy. I'll have the link down in the link below, as well as I also have numbered prints available. I have 20. They're all numbered out of 25, and they all are individually stamped and numbered. And so if you want a keepsake or you want to remember this video for later, you can buy a numbered print as well, or the original is available for sale. So get it. I only have one of these, and there's a framed or unframed option. So I hope you enjoy and stick around and stay tuned for the next video. Hope you enjoy.